Hey, good evening, everyone. It is 6:30, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This is Cooking with Plants, and I am Kelly Wilson. I am a registered dietitian and a board-certified lifestyle medicine practitioner at Trinity Health Ann Arbor. If you haven't been with us in our series, I just want to give you a little bit of background on what lifestyle medicine is and why we're focused on cooking with plants. So lifestyle medicine, it's a medical subspecialty where we focus on chronic disease treatment, prevention, and reversal through 6 pillars, one of which is whole food, plant-forward nutrition. That's what we focus on in this class. But we also work with our patients on daily movement, just establishing positive social connections, avoiding risky substances, getting restorative sleep, and managing stress in constructive ways. So lifestyle medicine is an evidence-based field that uses resources in all of those pillars to promote whole health and prevent chronic illness. So tonight, like I said, this class focuses on that whole food, plant-forward nutrition pillar because it is called Cooking with Plants. And our class tonight is going to be focused on fast, easy meals and some snacks that hopefully you can pull together really quickly in your kitchen to add some more of these plant foods to your plate. If you are joining us and you are a Trinity Health colleague, you get Live Your Whole Life points by watching this class or by watching the recordings of any of our classes. And to get those points, all you need to do is email lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org. If you are seeing a screen where the cutting board and the skillet are kind of cut off, you should see a button on the top toolbar where all of those icons are on your screen that says View. If you select Speaker View, you should then see a side-by-side display of my head and our skillet and cutting board. It should be a little bit larger so you're able to see more of that surface. And I recommend doing that so that you can see all of what we're going to be doing together tonight. Everyone is muted and all of your videos are turned off. And I always say it's not because I don't want you to participate, and that it continues to be true. It's simply because we're recording this class, and I want to make sure that for folks who are going to watch this class in the future, that recording is clean, and that if you don't want your face shown out to the world, your face is not shown out to folks that you didn't give permission to share it to. Also want to make sure if you want closed captioning, if that's helpful for you during the class, you can go to the 3 dots that say More on the top toolbar of your screen. It's a drop-down menu. It'll say Language Options, Speech and Language Options. Select that. There's an option to turn on closed captioning. And as soon as you select that, you should see some words populate the screen. If you do have a question tonight, you can use the question and answer feature, which is again in that toolbar where the icons are at the top of your screen. And it's 2 little chat bubbles, one that has a question mark in it, and then it has the letters Q and A underneath of it. So please drop questions there. I'll do my best to answer them. And if we don't answer anything that's relevant to the whole group by the end of class, I will make sure to send an email following up with the answer to that question. And as another quick reminder, everything that we talk about in this class series is focused on kind of general nutrition information. Everyone can benefit from adding more plant foods to their plates. However, certain health conditions, you may want to tweak some of the recipes that we're making together. So if you are newly diagnosed with a health condition and you haven't sought advice from a registered dietitian or your physician regarding the best nutrition for that health condition, please do that before making any broad sweeping changes. And I'll try to make some comments as we go throughout class and our recipes about what some of those tweaks might be depending on your health concerns. But again, most of the recipes that we're making are broadly acceptable to a variety of different health conditions. All right, so let's get into the heart of things. And we are going to, like I said, be talking about fast, easy meals. A couple options to get you started before we even get cooking is some prepackaged options from the grocery store. So these two brands, they aren't the only brands out there, and I'm not trying to promote necessarily purchasing these brands, but you've got Birds Eye and Purple Carrot. The reason I'm highlighting these ones is because when we look at the ingredients list, and this is the Birds Eye one, I'll try to get that so it's not blurry. Let's see, maybe that's a little bit better. You look at the ingredients list and it's things like brown rice and quinoa and rice vinegar and olive oil, miso paste, chili paste. We've got some garlic powder. The moral of the story is we've got words that we can pronounce in this package, and we can recognize all of these as real whole food. And I can look at my nutrition facts panel here, and I can see that it's low in added sugars, only 3 grams for this whole, so that's about a teaspoon for this whole package. And it's high in fiber, 13 grams, so more than like half, almost half of what you want to get in a day. So, and this is something that I would look at and go, okay, that seems like a pretty good whole food, plant forward option. Similar, this Purple Carrot bowl has similarly, it's whole food ingredients. It's high in fiber, high in protein, low in added sugars. Those are the things that you want to look for. These do have more sodium than foods that you might make at home. So the recipes that we're going to make tonight don't really have any sodium in them. So that's the only thing. If you're going to purchase some pre-packaged options, just balance your sodium intake throughout the rest of the day. These are totally fine. I use these when I have really busy, stressful weeks and don't have time to plan ahead. Just, again, make sure that you're varying and watching your sodium intake throughout the day if you're going to be relying on these. So not the only options, but just to give you some quick options to start with. Now, if we are going to make some things in our kitchen, I like to start with breakfast, demoing some options related to that because that's what we start our day with. So we're going to do 2 different breakfast options. We've got a chia seed pudding and a overnight oats. So the chia seed pudding, these are chia seeds. So these are tiny little black and white and gray seeds that are native to South America. They're really high in magnesium, omega-3 fatty acids, which are those anti-inflammatory fats, and calcium. So a good plant-based source of calcium. Magnesium and calcium, great for our bones, super important for muscle contraction. Heart health, can be helpful in regulating blood pressure and blood sugar. So important minerals in our diet. And again, those omega-3 fatty acids are also really important for calming down inflammation. So to make this chia seed pudding, we're going to start with 2 cups of berries. So these were previously frozen. They've been thawing in this bowl. I chose mixed berries. You could use blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, any kind of berry that you want. If berries aren't your favorite, you could use frozen chopped up peaches. Really, most any fruit will do here, and you could use fresh instead of frozen if that's what you have or that's what your preference is. I like using the berries from a nutrition perspective. These are going to be higher fiber and lower sugar, and this deep red and this deep purple color, they have compounds called anthocyanins, which are really powerful anti-inflammatory compounds that are great for our cognitive function and for our cardiovascular health. So we're just kind of upping, like any fruit is good, all fruit is good, and we're just kind of taking it to the next level with these dark colored berries as well. So I've got 2 cups of berries. I'm going to kind of mash them a little bit to get them into more bite-sized pieces. Some of these blackberries are pretty big and might not fit on my spoon, so I'm just going to mash those up with the back of my spoon. Doesn't have to be a smooth consistency. All right, that looks pretty good to me. So I've got my 2 cups of my berries. I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup of chia seeds. And then I'm going to add in 1.5 cups of a non-dairy milk. So I'm using an oat milk. just because that's what my taste preference is, what I prefer taste wise. You might prefer almond milk. If you wanted to up the protein in this, you could use something like soy milk. Just whatever non-dairy milk that you're using, just make sure that you're looking for ones without added sugar and that have short ingredients list, mostly with words that you can pronounce. Oftentimes, our non-dairy milks are fortified with calcium. So if you see some calcium on there, that's totally fine and probably helpful. So don't worry about that. But we're trying to stay away from a lot of the like the gums and the thickeners and those kinds of things that you might find, and that added sugar in particular. So 1.5 cups of that non-dairy milk went into this bowl. So the ratio of chia seed to liquid, 1 part of chia seed, so that half cup to about 3 parts, so 1.5 cups of liquid. All right, so that you can keep that ratio in mind if you want to scale up or scale down the recipe. So I'm just going to mix this together, and I'm going to add in my last 2 ingredients. So I've got a teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's going to help enhance the perception of sweetness without having to add a bunch of added sugar. And then I'm going to add in 1 tablespoon of maple syrup. Okay, you could use honey here if you wanted to, or you could skip. Totally up to you. All right, so now that's mixed together. And now what I'm going to do is just let that sit in the fridge overnight, and it's going to gel together. It's going to thicken and be kind of like a tapioca pudding like consistency. So I'm going to set this aside for now, and we're going to revisit this at the end of class, and you'll see how much thicker than where it is right now. So pay attention to how loosey-goosey that is, and then we'll check in at the end of class and see how much thicker it's gotten. We're going to leave this here. All right, our next recipe is an overnight oats. So this is another no-cook breakfast option that I like to make in batches. So I've got a pint mason jar. This is a glass jar. I'll grab 4 or 5 of these at the beginning of the week, and I'll make a bunch of these that I'll stick in my fridge so I have quick grab and go options throughout the week for breakfast. So I'm starting with my glass mason jar. If you don't have a glass mason jar, any container with a lid will do, right? You want it to be you want it to hold about 2 cups or more, so there's room for all of your ingredients. All right, so I've got my half of a large banana, and I'm going to use a fork just to mash this banana. Again, it doesn't have to be smooth. I'm just trying to get it into small enough pieces so that it'll mix with all of the other ingredients that I'm putting in here. And I'm using a banana, but you could use other fruit if you wanted to. Use berries, or apples and pears are in season right now. So if you wanted to make a fall inspired overnight oats, those would work just fine. You would just want to chop up the apple, chop up the pear into small pieces. The berries, you probably wouldn't have to do much chopping, just throw them in as is. And you might be looking at like a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup of fruit that you're tossing in here. All right, so I've got my mashed half of a banana. Next, I'm going to add a 1/2 cup of rolled oats. So rolled oats are a whole grain, and a whole grain is a type of grain that has all 3 parts of the grain. It's got the bran, which is the outer coating that has a lot of fiber and vitamins in it. It's got the starchy center endosperm, and then it's got the healthy fat and vitamin-rich germ. So all 3 of those components make a whole grain. When we refine grain, we're typically taking out the healthy fat and vitamin germ and that fiber-rich outer bran layer, and we're just left with the starch endosperm. And when we eat foods that are that refined starchy carbohydrate, it can spike our blood sugar much faster than when we're eating a food that's in its whole grain state. The fiber that's in the whole grains also helps with proper digestion. The soluble fiber that's in our oats can help with lowering our cholesterol levels. And we have good, like I said, good digestion from the fiber, which helps with good bowel movements. The fiber and the feeding the bacteria in our gut can help with good mood. Fiber is really important to our health. So eating whole grain foods is one of the ways that we can get that fiber in our diet. So I've got my whole grain rolled oats. Next, I'm going to add 3/4 cup of a non-dairy milk. Okay, and I'm going to give that a little bit of a stir now. And then I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of those chia seeds that we used earlier and a 1/4 teaspoon of cinnamon. The cinnamon is just for flavor, and cinnamon is also one of those spices that enhances our perception of sweetness. So that can be really a nice tool to use when you want something a little bit sweet, but you don't want to add a bunch of added sugar. All right, so mixing all those together. And the chia seeds are really nice in this because they absorb about 10 times their weight in water. They're really going to help this gel up and kind of create like a cooked oatmeal consistency without us actually having to cook this. And the final ingredient that I'm adding is a tablespoon of chopped walnuts. I like to just break them up with my hands rather than put them on my cutting board and chop. It feels a lot less messy to me, and I think it works just as well. Walnuts are also a good source of those plant-based omega-3 fatty acids that we mentioned were in the chia seeds as well. So you're getting those healthy anti-inflammatory fats in 2 ways in this recipe. So now I'm going to stick my lid on. Okay, and this is what it looks like. Okay, it's kind of watery. It'll gel up overnight. So you just stick this in the fridge as is, and then you take it out in the morning and no need to microwave it or cook it. You can eat it just like that. If you want it warm, great, go ahead and microwave it. But it is good to go just like this. All right, let's move on to our breakfast, or excuse me, we just did breakfast. We're done with breakfast. We're going to move on to some lunch and dinner options, and then we'll finish with some snack ideas. So we're going to go over here to our skillet, and we're going to make some tempeh tacos. So we've got tempeh. This is a block of tempeh. It's an 8-ounce block of tempeh. It comes pressed together. So these are soybeans. You can see the individual soybeans here that have been combined with a fungus and a grain and then let to ferment. And the nice thing about tempeh, I think, compared to tofu, is that it's got more of a meat-like texture. So it's firmer and not quite as soft and chewy as tofu is. So if you're new to trying soy foods and tofu is something that you haven't quite developed a taste yet for, try tempeh. I think it's really versatile and it has more of the mouthfeel that you might be used to if you're currently a meat eater. So this recipe, like I said, we're making a taco filling or like a taco meat. So what I'm going to do is I want to crumble this block of tempeh up so that it resembles kind of like a ground turkey or a ground beef. So to get there, I am literally just going to break it up with my hands. Some folks recommend using a box grater. You can grate this on a box grater if you want to get it into finer pieces. I kind of tend to like the bigger chunks and this, yeah, some of the texture that comes along with breaking it up this way. So this is my preference, but totally use that box grater if you want more of a fine taco filling. So we're just going to break this up. And while we're doing that, I am going to turn our skillet on. Okay, so we're getting that warmed up, and I'm just going to warm it up over medium heat for a little bit before I put my oil in the skillet. The nice thing about soy foods is in addition to getting some really high quality protein, you are also getting fiber and you're getting these compounds called phytoestrogens, one of which are called isoflavones. And there's a lot of research that's linking isoflavones to being cardioprotective and also protective against development and reoccurrence of certain kinds of cancer. So these foods are wonderful to incorporate. You can safely eat soy foods. You can safely eat a couple servings of soy foods a day. There's no problem with that. All right, so I've got my tempeh all crumbled up, and I'm going to add a tablespoon of avocado oil. You could also use olive oil here because we're using a medium low heat. You could also skip the oil altogether and do a water saute. And so you would use a couple tablespoons of water here. So we've let our oil heat up a little bit. And now I'm going to add in those tempeh crumbles. All right. And our next ingredient here, we're going to let that cook a little bit. I've got some taco seasoning, so I just want to show you, this is kind of what that taco seasoning looks like. I made some taco seasoning with spices that we had here, and just want to highlight what is in the taco seasoning, because it's really easy to make our own spice blends at home. You can make up a big batch, have that stocked in your pantry so that if you're making a meal like this, you can quickly season it. And the reason why I like to make my own spice blends is because you can control what's in it. A lot of times the spice blends have like anti-caking agents in them, or they might have a lot of added sodium. And so by making your own, you can skip the sodium, but still get all the flavor and still get all the anti-inflammatory benefits of the spices and herbs. So in this taco seasoning, we have cumin, we have smoked paprika, we've got a little bit of salt, we've got garlic powder, cayenne, and dried oregano. So if you're seeing any kind of like green bits in there, that's going to be that dried oregano. The smoked paprika is going to give us some smokiness, some of that umami kind of sensation that we might associate with more meat-based dishes. All right, so we've let this tempeh cook for a few minutes here. And you can see it's starting to get a little bit golden. I'm going to break up some of these big pieces. I'm going to add my spices. So I've got 2 tablespoons of that taco seasoning mix. And if you don't want to mess with making your own taco seasoning mix, I would just say when you're at the grocery store, just look for ones that are lower sodium and look for options that, again, are just the spices and there's less of those kind of filler ingredients. All right, so I'm just stirring this until my tempeh is coated. And I'm going to turn my heat up a little bit, so more like a medium high. And then I'm going to add in half a cup of salsa. It just started sizzling, and maybe you can hear that. And I'm going to stir that until it's combined. Now, the tempeh is totally fine to eat raw. So this dish is actually fine and ready to eat just as it is. I like to cook this until it's totally warmed through. So I'll cook this for about 5 minutes. That cooking time also helps infuse the flavor of the spices into the tempeh, which is a really kind of neutral flavor that takes on the flavor of whatever it is that you're cooking with it. So we'll let this cook. I'm going to turn it back down a little bit for a couple minutes. You also want to have some water on hand. So I've got about a 4th cup of water, and I'm going to pour that in here just to prevent the sticking. I noticed that my salsa was starting to stick to the pan. So I'm going to add a little bit of the water. The water helps with some steaming, which also helps infuse the flavors of those spices into the tempeh as well. All right, so I'm going to turn off my heat because that's that. So you let that cook for another minute or 2, and that tempeh is ready to go into your tacos to add in with some avocado or some shredded carrots in your whole grain corn tortilla shell. This makes a really beautiful, really yummy, really fast, easy weeknight meal. You could also, if you're kind of new to the plant foods and you're just kind of experimenting with adding some of these soy foods in, you could also mix this half and half with any protein that you typically would use in your taco filling, and that might be a good stepping stone to help you start to develop a taste for these foods. And I see that we have a question. There's a good question asking about the limit of soy-based foods, particularly with a history of breast cancer. And one of the things about soy foods that we used to have, like some old science that was based on animal models that led us to believe that soy foods were something that folks with a history of breast cancer should avoid. We now know, based on human studies with large data sets, that actually soy foods are protective against breast cancer development and breast cancer recurrence if somebody has had a history of breast cancer. So soy foods, whole food soy foods. So I'm talking about tempeh, tofu, edamame, which is the whole soybean. Those types of foods are perfectly safe to consume a couple times a day. Where we recommend folks avoid, because it's more of a processed food, are kind of like your textured vegetable protein, your soy protein isolate, your veggie burgers that are made from soy isolate, things like that. So focus more on your whole food soy, and you'll be just fine. All right. So I'm going to move this skillet out of the way so that we've got a little bit more space to work with. And then I'm going to move us on to our next recipe. So this is also a lunch or dinner recipe that could also be used as a snack if you wanted. So this is called a cowboy caviar. And we're going to start with, move this camera a little bit so we're seeing the cutting board a little bit clearly. There we go. All right. So this is cowboy caviar. We've got 2 cans of beans that have been drained and rinsed. Typically, a cowboy caviar would use like a black-eyed pea with black beans. We didn't have black-eyed peas in the kitchen. We had some dark red kidney beans, so we used those instead. If you're cooking these beans from dry, you would be looking at about 3 to 4 cups of cooked beans. Okay, you could use garbanzo beans in this dish too. That would also be really nice. We've got 1 cup of corn. So we used a frozen corn that we steamed, put that in here. We've got half of a medium red onion that was very finely diced by my assistant Ashley tonight. And then we've got a 1 bell pepper, 1 orange bell pepper that was also finely diced. We're going to add in a few other veggies and then make a dressing to bring it all together. So let's get started. So we're going to set these aside. Our first veggie that we're going to add in another bell pepper. So to get this to the state that you see here in this bowl, I like to start by laying the pepper down on its side. And remember that when we're holding our knives, we're pinching it. We're pinching the blade close to the handle between our thumb and our first finger. And we're wrapping our 3 fingers around the handle like this, okay? And then my non-knife holding hand, I'm making into a claw shape, okay, to keep the fingertips away from the knife blade, okay? Helps keep my fingers safe. So you see my knuckles are down on my food like this. My pepper is on its side with my stem end facing my knife, and I'm just going to slice off that stem end. I'm not going to throw this away. I'm going to use it, so don't worry. I'm going to turn my pepper around, and I'm going to cut this bumpy end off. So that's the blossom end, and I'm going to set that aside. Also going to use it, but why I did that is because now I have a very stable pepper. So flat surfaces are stable. It's not going to roll around on me. So this is much easier to work with. And now I want to get these seeds and this white pithy part out of the pepper without getting seeds everywhere. Because I don't know about you, but when I didn't know how to cut a pepper, I was always getting pepper seeds everywhere, sticking to me, sticking to the other foods that I was cooking with. And it's messy. It's not fun. So by doing it this way, hopefully you will avoid that mess and nuisance for yourself. So I'm going to slice down. I'm going to make basically 4 cuts, kind of cut in a square around this pepper. And I'm going to slice down on the edge so that I'm removing that pith. I'm going to turn the pepper like so, kind of make these nice squared off pieces. And then voila, I've got my seeds and my pith all in one nice pretty little package, and that goes into my compost bucket. Okay, now I'm going to stack these nice square pieces on top of each other, and I am going to make thin slices lengthwise down these squares. Okay, then I'm going to pull those together in a nice little pile, and I'm going to cut the opposite direction, making some thin cuts so that I'm getting small, uniform, square pieces. And cooking's not about being perfect. It's okay if they're not all evenly matched in size, as long as it is in there and it's the texture and size that you prefer. That's what matters. It's going to taste the same. Okay. I said that this was a fast and easy class, right? So if you want to make this recipe even faster and even easier, check out the pre-cut produce in your grocery store. Totally fine to use those chopped peppers, use those chopped onions. Oftentimes you'll see like diced celery or sliced Brussels sprouts, all sorts of different things in that section. Use those as a shortcut. I do that all the time when I know that I'm going to have a busy week or I didn't plan something. Those are just as good. So we're adding our red peppers into our bowl here. And notice that when I'm scraping something into my bowl, I'm using the non-blade side because I don't want to dull the blade of my knife. A dull knife is a dangerous knife. Sharp knives are actually really safe. So we want to make sure we're doing everything we can to keep our knives sharp. All right, we're going to cut one more thing together. This is a jalapeno. If you do not like spice, you don't have to use the jalapeno. Or you can cut your jalapeno in a way that will help limit the spice. And I'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to put gloves on because I'm going to be cooking a bunch of other recipes and I don't have time in between using this jalapeno to wash my hands. But if you're at home, you could just make sure you wash your hands up after using the jalapeno, or you could invest in some nitrile gloves if you'd prefer. So I'm going to cut this in a way that's going to help decrease the spiciness because I like a little spicy, but I'm also a little bit of a baby and I think I might cry if I get all of the seeds in here. So if you're someone who likes spicy, then what I would recommend doing is slice in rings so that you're getting that pith part. That is where, so this white kind of pith part and the seeds, that's where a lot of the heat of our hot peppers live. Okay, so you can keep those and chop those into the dish if you are a spice lover. Like I said, I'm not a super spice fan, so we're going to just set that cut end of the pepper down on the cutting board. I'm going to hold the stem end, and then I'm going to slice very similarly to how we just did with our bell pepper. I'm going to slice kind of in a square around, taking care to get not too much of that pith and keep all of the seeds intact in that central core here. All right, so now this is going to go in my compost bucket. And then I'm going to stack a couple of these up at a time. I'm going to do some nice thin slices. Again, kind of trying to make my claw with my non-knife hand. And then I'm going to go the opposite direction. And I'm trying to cut even finer pieces, so more of like a mince with this. Again, you do you. If you like spicy and you don't mind having a larger chunk of jalapeno, totally fine to have bigger pieces. I want this flavor infused more throughout the dish. So I'm going to mince because that's what mincing helps us do. It helps us get those more intense flavors spread throughout our dish. So jalapenos going in there. Now what I'm going to do is flip over. I'm going to wipe my knife with my towel here to get some of those oils off. I'm going to flip over my cutting board. So goodbye hot pepper oils. And then I'm going to take off my gloves. If you were at home, this would be the time where you'd want to wash your hands before doing anything else so you don't get any of those hot pepper oils in your eye, on your nose, on your lips, or anywhere else that it might be uncomfortable. All right, so our salad's kind of turning into a rainbow, which is really fun. It's one of the reasons why I love this recipe. We've got a couple more ingredients to add. We've got 2 cups of cherry tomatoes that were diced in half. And we're just kind of at the tail end of tomato season. You might still be able to find some at the local markets. And if you can, it's a great way to use them. We've got a couple tablespoons of some lime juice. We've got a tablespoon of some red wine vinegar. Both of those are adding some acidity and brightness to round out this dish. We've got a half cup of extra virgin cold pressed olive oil. Olive oil is really high in compounds called polyphenols, which help calm down inflammation. We've got some smoked paprika, 1 teaspoon of smoked paprika, and 1 teaspoon of cumin. Both of those spices are going to give kind of a meaty umami flavor to this dish. And then we've got a 1/4 cup of cilantro leaves that were chopped. So a 1/4 cup of chopped cilantro. All right, now all we're going to do is mix this together. And we have our salad. And what's really, really nice about this recipe is that the beans are full of fiber. And I mentioned fiber is one of the most important things that we can be consuming, not only for its benefits with GI health and heart health, but it keeps us full. It satiates us. So it helps us prevent us from overeating. I think a lot of folks, when they're moving towards plant-based, they wonder like, okay, how many calories should I be eating? And we shy away from talking about calories too much because if you're eating these whole foods, you're going to be eating a lot of fiber and you're going to be really full, and it's going to be really hard to eat more than what your body actually needs. Fiber is also really helpful for producing these compounds called short-chain fatty acids, which have a host of benefits throughout our body systems. It's recommended that we consume between 25 and 35 grams of fiber per day. There is research that shows upwards of 40 grams of fiber per day could be beneficial, especially when thinking about preventing certain types of cancers. And there is research to show that folks who regularly consume a high fiber diet have lower incidences of certain types of cancers. 1/2 cup of beans is going to give you about 7 grams of fiber. So if you think about, that's a pretty significant amount if you're aiming for that 25 grams of fiber per day. So full of fiber, full of great plant-based proteins. And then look how beautiful this is. You're getting almost every color of the rainbow in this dish, and each one of those colors corresponds to a different plant compound and nutrient that has different health benefits for our bodies. So not only is this fast, it's beautiful, and it's really nutrient dense. You can eat this as a snack with some whole grain crackers. This is a crowd favorite at tailgates or football Sundays. It's also really great stuffed into a whole grain pita or a wrap. and eaten as a sandwich with maybe some lettuce greens thrown in there. And then you could also throw this on top of a salad or any type of whole grain, like some brown rice, and make kind of a Tex-Mex style salad or bowl. So lots of really great options, really, really versatile, easy dish. All right, I think we've got two more. Peas, our next snack option. This is one that we're just gonna talk through real quick. There's less hands-on cooking involved. But here you can see on the cutting board, we've got some chickpeas that have been roasted. So these were canned chickpeas. So 1 can of chickpeas that we drained and rinsed, and then we patted dry with a, oh, it looks like I lost. There we go. Oh, can you see me? Oh, hold on. You can, sorry for the technical difficulties, folks. 1 second. I don't know why that's not working. Okay. Well, for some reason, that camera went out. So what we're going to do, we're going to switch gears. There you go. You can see my cutting board over here on a different camera. So right in front of you, what you have are some roasted chickpeas. Again, this was 1 can of chickpeas that was drained and rinsed. And then we patted them dry with a towel and roasted them in the oven for 20 minutes. 20 to 30 minutes is kind of the recommendation in a 400-degree oven. What we're going for is just to get these nice and crispy. They were coated in some avocado oil because we were roasting in a 400-degree oven. An olive oil smoke point is about 350 degrees. So we wanted to use an oil like avocado that has a higher smoke point. So we tossed them in a little bit of avocado oil, a pinch of salt. And then when they came out of the oven, we tossed them in some za'atar. So this is a Mediterranean spice blend that has thyme and sumac and sesame and some other spices and herbs. And it's really bright and very flavorful. You could also use some curry powder. You could use some cumin. You could use whatever, some smoked paprika, whatever spice you prefer. You just want to add it after it has come out of the oven, because when it's roasting, if we put the spices on during that 400-degree roasting time, because we're roasting it for so long, the spices will burn and they'll get really bitter, and it won't be as enjoyable of a snack. So these roasted chickpeas are a delightful, crunchy snack if you need something to satisfy that salty, crunchy craving. These are a really great option. They're also great as a crouton for salads or on top of soups. And you're getting a lot of fiber and protein because chickpeas are a bean. And you're also getting a lot of folate. Chickpeas are high in folate, which is a compound that's really important for DNA repair and recovery, for neurotransmitter production, for detoxification in our body. And it's helpful for fat metabolism, all host of beneficial things. Also a really important nutrient if you are a pregnant person. So chickpeas, powerhouse, and delicious. Highly recommend trying this recipe. All right, we've also got, and I'm gonna just get rid of this other camera since it's not working, so that you'll have just the one view. All right, there you go. And sorry about that, folks, for the technical difficulty. I appreciate your patience with that. Okay, so we've got our last recipe before we're going to check in on that chia seed pudding is some energy bites. So we're going to do a fall themed energy bite. There's lots of different recipes out there for energy bites, but we've got some pumpkin energy bites that we're going to focus on. So our recipe starts with 3 cups of rolled oats. Okay, remember those are a whole grain. And then I've got a 4th cup of ground flaxseed. So flaxseed, another great plant-based source of omega-3 fatty acids. We're getting some fiber from these as well. And flaxseed have lignans, which are a type of polyphenol and a phytoestrogen precursor, like those soy isoflavones that we were talking about, that have the potential to reduce the risk for certain types of cancer and cardiovascular disease. So getting a lot of good benefits from having those flax seeds on board. Flax seeds are also really great if you put them in a salad, just kind of sprinkled on top. I like to put them in my oatmeal or whatever kind of breakfast porridge I am making. So those are pretty versatile as well. If you buy the ground flaxseed, just make sure that you're storing it in the fridge, because those healthy oils will, if they're exposed to heat or to a lot of oxygen for a long period of time, they can go bad or become rancid. So storing them in the fridge prolongs their life and their health benefits. All right, so we've got our dry ingredients. Oh, one more dry ingredient. We've got a tablespoon of cinnamon. The original recipe calls for pumpkin pie spice, which is, cinnamon and clove and nutmeg. It's a variety of different spices mixed together. I don't have that here in the kitchen, so I just swap in cinnamon. You can do that at home as well. I've got a 1/2 cup of canned pumpkin. Pumpkin, like any of our orange vegetables, has a lot of vitamin A, which is great for our immune system and our eyes. There's a lot of fiber in pumpkin too. We're getting about 3 grams per 1/2 cup. In addition to recipes like this, I really like, especially this time of year, mixing pumpkin into my breakfast oatmeal with a touch of cinnamon, maybe a splash of maple. I'm getting that cozy fall flavor. I've got 1 cup of peanut butter. You could use a different nut butter here if you have a peanut sensitivity or you don't love the taste of it. A sunflower butter works great in this recipe as well. Okay, and then I've got a teaspoon of vanilla and 1/2 cup of dark chocolate chips and a 1/2 cup of maple syrup. You could use honey here as well. All right, and we are going to give everything a nice stir here. And I'm just looking for the oats to be moistened by those wet ingredients and everything to be thoroughly combined, so that I don't have any spots of this batter that's just all peanut butter or just all pumpkin, but I'm getting those flavors and ingredients infused throughout. This is another one of those recipes where it makes a lot. So you're going to get about 20 or 30 of these energy bites, depending on how big you make them, from this recipe. So you can freeze these. You can keep them in the fridge to eat throughout the week as well. They will keep for about 5 days or so if you keep them in the fridge. I really like making them and then throwing them in the freezer and pulling them out to have as a snack with my evening cup of tea as part of my wind down ritual. Or if I need something quick, grab and go out the door, instead of grabbing a pre-made energy bar, I will grab 1 or 2 of these. They're also a great pre-workout snack. I feel like they're pretty easy on the tummy, so I'll sometimes eat them at that time as well. All right, so now what we're gonna do, again, I put gloves on because this is kind of messy. They're a little sticky, and that's okay. Over time, as this batter sits, when you can even let it sit like this for a little bit if you want to, the oats will start to absorb some of the moisture and it'll be a little less sticky. The flaxseed will also help with that. The flaxseed is really a binder in this recipe, kind of keeping everything stuck together. But right now, because I don't have the luxury of time to let this sit, I'm going to use these gloves because the batter is a little sticky. All right, so I'm adding probably about a tablespoon and a half of this batter, and I'm just kind of rolling it into a nice little ball like that. And this is good to go as is. You can eat it just like this. You can stick it in a container to put in the fridge. If you're going to freeze it, I'd recommend putting some parchment paper down on a cutting board or a sheet tray, and then lining up all of your energy bites on that parchment paper. Don't stack them on top of each other. Do a single layer and then let those freeze. And then you can toss them into a large Ziploc baggie or other container, and they won't stick to each other. And then you can just grab them out one at a time as you eat them. So those are our energy bites. And there's so many different variations on this. I feel like some common ingredients are often the nut butter and liquid sweetener of some kind with the oats. And then I've seen recipes that throw in dried cranberries or raisins or chopped up walnuts. You could use the dried fruit instead of the chocolate chips. I've subbed in raisins in this recipe instead of the chocolate chips, and that's worked out beautifully as well. All right, let's check back in. Can I have that spatula, please? Thank you. Let's check back in on our chia seed pudding. We can see what time is for this recipe. Okay, so we put this in our fridge overnight. We woke up the next morning, and here we go. Our chia seed pudding is much thicker than when we started. So you really want this to hydrate for at least an hour or two. This is getting really close to being done, but you want to let it hydrate for an hour or two or overnight. So I include this in the fast, easy recipe category because we can just make it the night before, plop it in the fridge, and then it's good to go in the morning. So we're ready to eat this for our breakfast, or I'm going to plate some and show you what it looks like. This also makes a really good snack. The nice thing about chia seed pudding too is you don't have to make it sweet. So you can skip the vanilla, you can skip the maple syrup and the fruit, and you could just do the oat or the soy milk and your chia seeds, and then you could maybe add a pinch of salt, and you could top it with some chopped tomatoes. I think kind of like a cottage cheese alternative. It's yummy that way if you top it with a little bit of the nutritional yeast, which has kind of a Parmesan-like flavor. So lots of different options. But we went sweet today because we were talking breakfast. And one of the ways that I really like to enjoy this is with a sprinkling of cacao nibs on top. So that's the cacao nibs on there. This is what they look like just by themselves. And here is a package. Again, this is one brand. I'm not endorsing this particular brand. This just happens to be the brand that we have in our kitchen right now. But why I like using the cacao nibs in recipes like this or sprinkled on my oatmeal is we're getting some of that chocolatey flavor. So cacao nibs are raw chocolate that don't have any sugar or other ingredients added to them. So we're getting that chocolatey flavor. We're getting a nice texture differential. So we're getting a lot of crunch from those cacao nibs to balance out kind of the softer textures of the chia seed pudding. And then we're also getting a lot of those polyphenols, so those beneficial compounds that are found just in plants that act as antioxidants. So they're protecting our cells from damage. Cacao nibs, so the raw chocolate, is really high in a particular type of polyphenol called flavonoids. And those flavonoids have been shown to potentially decrease risk for cardiovascular disease, improve cognitive function. And there is evidence that shows that regular consumption of polyphenols, again, these are found in plant foods, does support a healthy digestive system and a good balance of the right kinds of bacteria in our gut. So adding foods like those cacao nibs can be, and eating the rainbow, eating all the colors of our veggies, like what was in our cowboy caviar, can go a long way in helping you get those polyphenol foods into your diet. All right, so with that, thanks again for bearing with the tech challenges. I want to just remind everyone that what really helps when we're pulling together fast, easy recipes is making sure that we have a well-stocked pantry. And class 1, so the very first class of our series, we focused on what it takes to have a well-stocked whole food pantry. So if you missed that class, please go back and watch that one. I think you would get a lot of value out of it, and it would make all of these recipes that we talked about tonight come together much faster for you. We have the recordings on our class website, and I'll also link to them in the follow-up email for today's class as well, so you can go back and watch that recording if it's helpful. We will send out the recording within a week of class, and the recipes are all currently up on the class website, which will also be linked in our follow-up email. And now I see that there's a couple questions, and I just want to make sure that we answered those. Oh, appreciate the heads up. There's a broken link on the tempeh tacos. I will make sure that we fix that. And there's questions about leaving some ingredients out of recipes if you have a sensitivity. Yeah, so that cowboy caviar recipe that we made here, it'll be a little bit different if you don't have, oh here, I forget that you can't see. So this is that cowboy caviar, right? We used a lot of onions and we used a lot of peppers in that dish. If you can't eat those foods, go ahead and omit those. And maybe you want to add some celery to mimic the crunch of the peppers. It's going to have a slightly different flavor, but you can still get some of that texture and that color that way. Just swap in some different veggies that you do enjoy, and it'd be totally fine. You might have to play around with it a little bit, but I'm confident you could find a combination that would work well for you. Wonderful. All right. Well, like I said, I will make sure that that link is fixed on the website and that you get all of the recipes and the links to the recordings in our follow-up email. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us at lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org. Again, that's lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org, and we'd be happy to answer whatever questions come up. I hope that you have a month of wonderful cooking and you try some of these plant-forward recipes. And if you do, I would love to hear all about it. See you next month. Take good care and happy cooking.